This is a Sports Radio Live podcast covering your world of sports. Bryan Houston's Sports Radio Live. It's weekdays at 3 on 99.3 Talk FM, the talk of East Texas.
Nice to have the band back. Everybody's back from vacation today. And with us right now from Big 12 Media Days, from the Forward Star Telegram, the Big Mac blog on the APEC VIP hotline. Cutting edge training for the serious athlete, apecgo.com. Mac Engel, how you doing, Mac?
I'm good, Brian. What's going on?
How was vacation?
It was fine. It was good. I can't really complain. I had a nice time doing nothing, and I really did commit to doing nothing.
Did you just staycation?
Yeah, kind of. I mean, I did get to see The Dark Knight.
Okay, I did too. I did too. What'd you think?
I really liked it. I thought, the standard was impossible because the first two were so good, but I didn't necessarily agree with some of the critics that I had read that but I loved it. I loved the whole trilogy. I thought it was great. I'm just bummed they're not going to make any more, but that's a great sign when you make a film or a TV show or a movie or a radio show or whatever else, when the audience is saying, gosh, I wish it was a little bit longer, or wish I had a little bit more. I loved it. Not
only when you have so many things left to your imagination at the end and you're thinking, man, they got to have a fourth movie here, you know?
Totally, and I wondered about that. Honestly, I wrote about it this morning. This reminded me a little bit of the end of the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Now, Granted, there are books for that, so that's different, but at the end of it, it left it totally open for The Hobbit, and this one leaves it open for Batman and Robin in a way. So I hope I didn't give too much away there, but I am hopeful that maybe they give it a shot down the line, but I don't know if they will.
I'm just concerned about who could end up being Batman and who might end up being Robin at this point.
I don't know. I mean, you get the impression that Christian Bale was probably done with the trilogy. But Joseph Gordon-Levitt, I certainly wouldn't have any problem with that.
Yeah, and based on the X-rays, I mean, he didn't have any cartilage in either knee. He's done.
Yeah, wasn't that great? I love that twist, that they looked at his body and basically said, you're garbage, you're junk, you've beaten yourself up so bad. I love that twist.
One of the athletic trainers that's on my Facebook page that sponsors this phone line, as a matter of fact, says Batman looked really old and unathletic. I'm doing, dude, the guy was out for 8 years and he was on a cane when he came back.
Point.
What do you want?
Yeah,
you know?
That's like a boxer coming back. That's like Foreman coming back, that he had been out of it that long and to get back in the game for a little bit. That's pretty impressive.
It was great. It was a great movie. Okay, so you're at Big 12 Media Days today. It's got to stink to be one of those coaches and have to sit there spending all your day talking about Penn State.
Well, Brian, every one of the coaches who talked, and I believe there were 5 who talked today, every one of them did their best to not talk about Penn State. I mean, Bill Snyder, who doesn't talk about anything, Bill Snyder at Kansas State all but announced at the top that he wasn't going to talk about it. And he even drew in the tragedy at Denver, at the Denver movie premiere of The Dark Knight Rises. He even managed to draw that into the statement, which I thought was a bit odd. But none of these guys wanted to talk about it. The Big 12 Conference Commissioner, Bowlesby, he addressed it and was pretty tactful with it and was being honest. It wasn't like he was running from it. But it's a sad day. I mean, this is a real black eye on college athletics, and I think, while everybody is commending Penn State, or not Penn State, but the NCAA's decisions are to really drop the hammer on Penn State, I don't know if there was anything. I mean, they obviously had to do something, but Brian, for me, nothing changes. Just nothing. No punishment can undo what was done here, and most of the time you can't. I mean, most of the time, punishments are punitive or even vengeful sometimes. But I looked at this thing and say, you know what? There are a lot of damaged and tortured and scarred lives out there, and whether or not Penn State loses 5 scholarships, whether or not they lose $60 million, nothing can change that. Oh, and that's the tragic part in all of it. I totally agree with you, but to do nothing would have been even more of a slap in the face of those victims, though. And I wrote that the NCAA could not do nothing. And I don't believe that the death penalty, I don't really believe the death penalty, in light of what happened at SMU in the 80s and the collateral damage that was caused to the university, I don't think the death penalty is really even appropriate anymore. I think there are ways you can hamstring programs and really cripple programs without using the death penalty. But I do look at what Penn State has in place in terms of athletic department and things like that. I think they're better suited to come out of this, unlike SMU, when it came out of the death penalty, college athletics was changing in a way that no one had really predicted was coming, and they just weren't in a position to run with it. I think Penn State will be, but I think unlike most penalties, I think this will be at least 10 years before the university is truly recovered from something like this. What
did you think of all the sanctions after you got a chance to look at them?
To me, I think as a university, when you start talking about $60 million, that's basically 1 year football-related revenue out the door. I think that's pretty significant. I think the bowl ban is I think that will hurt recruiting. I think the two things most in terms of on the field that will hurt the most are that dramatic reduction in scholarships for 4 years. That is a lot. That is going to put such a burden on that coaching staff to recruit and not miss. And for 4 years, you just can't miss. And think about it, Bryan. All the time we look at college recruiting classes with a university size 25 guys, and how many of them flame out just because. Well, now Penn State's not going to have any wiggle room to flame out, and it doesn't change the fact they're playing in a really competitive conference. So I think those are two things that sort of came to mind. I think the other one too that sort of jumped out at me as being pretty harsh are some of these other sort of vagaries in terms of focus on the culture, focus on the academic. I don't even know how to phrase it. Basically, focus on academics and athletics, and that to me, there was some wiggle room in there that may allow the NCAA in the future to continue a watchful eye over the athletic department. And the sad part about it to me is that you're going to have a lot of people there now, and this happens all the time. Is that you're going to have people there now who are going to be watched under. And let's face it, academics was not Penn State's problem.
Not at all.
So that one to me was a bit peculiar. Oh, and the other one I didn't want to forget this one, but the other one too is anybody at Penn State now can transfer. And so if you've got a guy, and obviously you've got to think if you're a Penn State football player, I would think especially if you're a sophomore or younger, I can't imagine why you would stay.
No.
If you can get a similar opportunity elsewhere, I just can't imagine why you'd stay. And I look at the damages that this university has sustained as a result of this, and the way other programs have come out of the NCAA doghouse. The ones that jump to mind, the one that really worked was Kentucky men's basketball back in the 80s and early 90s. They came out of that pretty fast, actually, when they hired Rick Pitino. But you got to remember, Bryan, in the 80s, TCU got hammered.
I remember.
Remember that one?
Oh,
and
yeah.
That was basically a walking death penalty.
Yes.
This seems to be some parallels to that, and it took TCU until 1998 or 99, so from about 85 or 86 until 98 or 99 before it really got going. And I wouldn't be surprised if Penn State's looking at a 10-year period here before it gets its feet back under it.
Okay, so that set aside, Big 12 Media Days today, you heard from, I know you heard from TCU and Gary Patterson. Who else did you hear from today?
Bob Stoops of Oklahoma talked. Paul Rhodes of Iowa State spoke. Commissioner Bowlesby spoke. Bill Snyder of Kansas State spoke. And Tommy Tuberville of Texas Tech all spoke.
What of all of that was newsworthy today?
Oh, nothing really fantastic. I mean, you know how it goes. You've done these before. I think the one that interests me is that and I think anybody who's ever spent 5 minutes with Tommy Tuberville likes Tommy Tuberville. I get the impression that, the one thing he's starting to sell now is he's selling recruits.
Yeah.
To the fan base. He said, we're getting recruits. And to me, that's kind of the last thing you can throw out. It doesn't mean that I think they're going to lose or they're going to be bad, but to me that says he knows he's got to start, he's got nothing. Because he's talking about some of these recruiting, how great these recruiting classes are, and how much more depth he has this season, and how his defense should be significantly better because of the injury situation that they had last year when they were moving running wide receivers to defensive back.
Yes.
Because there's nobody else. But if you're a tech person, you kind of kind of have to be cautiously optimistic because he's stressing defense. He's stressing the fact that recruiting has been upgraded dramatically. He's telling you, listen, I was told time and again how hard it is to get players to Lubbock. He said, I'm not finding that to be the case at all. He's saying he's recruiting nationally. So if you're a fan, then you can sit there and say, oh, well, great, we got them coming. That means they're coming. That means last year and this year they're coming. But as you and I both know, that takes 2 years probably.
If they give him that long.
If they give, and that's the problem. Can they be patient enough to give him that long? Because as you and I both saw last year and a little bit 2 years ago, even though they went to a bowl, Tech has been terrible.
Oh, and you know that if TCU comes into the conference and has a big year to start, you realize how short that leash gets for Tommy.
And I think he's got to know it. And I think that's one of the reasons why he constructed his non-conference schedules the way he had. I mean, just loaded with jokes.
Mike Leach.
Yeah, Mike, and you know what? This is not, I'm not indicting Tommy Tuberville. I'm indicting the profession on doing that. They all do it. They all stack it with crap and tell you how hard their non-conference schedule is because they're all trying to get to 6 wins at least and get that bowl appearance check. So I'm not criticizing Tommy on that one at all, but I do think you're right, 100%. If TCU comes in and finishes ahead of them,
not going to go well.
No, it'll be. And the problem is they've given him all this money. I mean, and if you're Tommy Tuberville at his age,
yeah,
he'd be laughing all the way to the bank. Doesn't mean that I don't think he's a crook or a thief or doesn't want to win games, but still, what a great racket he got. He nailed. So good for him.
Especially considering the shape he was in when he left Auburn or was asked to leave Auburn. It's not like he left there, with a parade.
No. I mean, that's the guy who basically almost won a national title at Auburn, and he got run out of town.
That's exactly right. Now, one last question, because you weren't here last week. Des Bryant, what would you do with his knucklehead?
I mean, I think the bigger point is, are you really surprised?
No, not at all.
So to me, this is what the Cowboys knew they were drafting, and I know this. Most of the people in that building said, "Do not draft this guy."
Mm-hmm.
And Jerry said, "No, we got to do this."
I'm the smartest guy in the room.
I don't even know. You know what Jerry would tell you? Mark Cuban will sit there and tell you, "I am the smartest guy in the room." Jerry's not going to tell you he's the smartest guy in the room. Jerry loves risks, and it's probably one of the reasons that made him a billionaire. He can take on risks where other people would say, you know what, that's not the right thing. And the risk on that guy's talent, I mean, you got to admit it, Brian, the guy is a physical freak.
Oh, it's scary how good he could be if, he didn't have a nickel head.
Yep. And that is the reason why most people at the Cowboys said, don't take him. Don't take him. Run, run, run. So whether or not this behavior is, I mean, according to the police report, it's pretty ugly behavior. But and I have to tell you, pretty unique. I don't know if I'd ever seen something like that. I just don't think it's terribly surprising. And my point, it was last year, 2 years ago, you knew what he was when you were drafting him. So whether or not it was baggy pants at North Park Mall, which is nothing, or an outstanding debt to a jeweler, or basically what appears to be a domestic disturbance involving his mother.
Yeah.
Or even going back to the days when he was at Oklahoma State. It's pretty consistent.
Yeah, very consistent. Yeah, so probably another 3 months from now we'll hear something else about Des. So
probably. And the hard part about it is, Brian, is that when there was stuff going on with Michael Irvin, you dealt with it because the guy produced.
Exactly.
I mean, the guy. Whatever you want to say about the guy's off the field life, yeah, go ahead. But it was really hard to say much about what he did on the field.
Had the skins on the wall.
Yeah, right. And with Des, you're not even saying that about production. You're saying that about you're dealing with it because it's potential.
Yeah, one of these days, maybe it'll show up. Maybe.
Right. That's exactly. Maybe. Okay. Perhaps there it is. And you see it for one play in a game. You're like, holy cow. And then you see him unable to be on the same page with his quarterback.
Yeah. Are you going to Cowboys training camp?
No, I'm not, Brian. I will be back in the greater Fort Worth area doing my greater part. But no, I will not be going to Oxnard, unfortunately.
Now, honestly, are you glad about this, or are you?
Yes and no. No, I mean, yes. I tell you what, and I don't know if you've ever been there. I miss the weather. I've done it. I did it for 4 or 5 years. I miss the weather.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, the weather is 70 degrees. You can wear a jacket in the evening, a jacket in the morning. Their idea of warm is 78 degrees.
Oh, I know.
So there's no better time as a Texan to be in California than right the hell now. So, I do miss, for that reason, I miss being there.
I went when Tom Landry and the Great Triumvirate ran the Cowboys, and they used to feed you at the training table. Those days are over.
Those days are long gone. They want you out as fast as possible.
That's exactly right. No such thing nowadays, I can tell you.
No.
Hey, well, Mac, we will talk to you from California the next week, if that's okay, all right?
That sounds great, Brian. Thanks a lot.
Hey, man, thanks very much. Again, it's the Big Mac blog, and you do it. What days of the week are you doing this?
On the blog?
Yeah, every day?
Oh, Brian, blog doesn't go to sleep.
7 days a week, 24 hours a day.
Pretty much. If something's happening, it's there. Pop culture, sports, politics, news, entertainment. You don't have to go anyplace else, Brian.
And TCU babes. I've noticed a lot of that lately.
That's a coincidence. Yeah, that's a coincidence.
Okay, sure. Whatever you say.
Yeah, thanks.
Hey, Mac Engel from the Fort Worth Star-Telegram. Thanks a lot, buddy. We'll talk to you later on.
Thanks a lot, Brian.
All right, talk to you later. Mac Engel from Fort Worth Star-Telegram. Yeah, just a mere coincidence that there are a lot of Big 12 cheerleaders and TCU babes on
just
the
a bunch of babes.
blog.
I have the same problem.
This is a Sports Radio Live podcast covering your world of sports. Bryan Houston's Sports Radio Live. It's weekdays at 3 on 99.3 Talk FM, the talk of East Texas.